All right, so I am making this video about how I incubate my Uromastyx eggs. I want to start just by saying there's a lot of different ways you can do this. So I'm going to try to cover a few different things as I go along to help answer some questions, but it's by no means the only way to do it. I use two different kinds of containers. You can see these Glad containers right here with a hole punched on either side of the lid. Sometimes the holes are punched on the side of the container. And then I use these Tokyo Joe's like food containers here, and I cut holes in the lid on either side. You can see that right there. I like to use perlite, but you can use vermiculite or coconut fiber, or I've seen people incubate in sand. I mean, there's a lot of different ways, like a lot of different types of substrates that you can use. And I've added water and moisture to this, but it's very little. So you can see how it's barely holding a clump when I squeeze it together. That's about how much moisture I put in. I don't know, I go by feel when I do this, so I don't have like a set ratio for exactly what moisture to medium ratio that I use. And part of that is just because, number one, I've had a lot of experience doing this, but number two, there's a wide range of conditions under which eggs will hatch. And so you don't need to get a bullseye. You really only need to get inside that acceptable range and eggs will hatch. After the eggs are laid, I place them in these containers and I incubate anywhere from 88 degrees Fahrenheit up to 92, 93 degrees Fahrenheit. I prefer to incubate a little bit cooler at the 88 range, just a personal preference. I like the way everything turns out a little bit better when it's at that temperature. And when you add them to the incubator, it's worth noting that if the eggs dimple a little bit, you want to add, that might be a sign that you need to add a little bit of water and add a little bit of moisture. Do so extremely slowly and conservatively, because it's easy to add water and it's very difficult to take water away. It's common for eggs to dimple just a little bit if it's too dry, and then as you add a little bit of moisture to the medium, the eggs will puff back up slowly. Resist the urge to overwater in the event of dry eggs or eggs that you find a little bit dry. Just give them time, be patient. And if you have eggs that are going bad progressively, so usually in my experience, if the eggs survive the first 2 weeks, they're usually going to hatch. That's not always the case. That's just my experience here. And oftentimes, if the eggs start to fail after 2-3 weeks, you're probably looking at something that's like an inherent inviability in the egg and not necessarily having anything to do with fertility or anything like that. Next thing is, eggs will sometimes dimple before they hatch. Not always, but they will often dimple and dent anywhere from 2 to 3.5 weeks before hatching. And then you'll get baby Uromastyx. This is a nice clutch of ornates. This is a clutch of 20. You see the last little ones just barely starting to make their way out of the egg. One other last note is I've added, what do you call it? What's the name of that? Just make sure they don't get out. I've added to this incubation medium, I've added activated charcoal. That's what it's called. I add just a pinch of that, and it's because it's something I saw Douglas Dix do years and years and years ago, and I thought it was pretty cool, but it's definitely not required, and there's argument as to whether or not it's even beneficial. So take that as like do whatever the hell you want. So anyway, these hatched on April 4th. Right now it's June 8th, but they've been hatching for the last couple of days. So there you have it. Super cool.